Millennials are the new boomers. They just don't realize it. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. The way boomers acted about the internet is the same way that millennials are acting about AI. Some of the biggest companies in the world were gone or reduced to basically nothing. This is the other side of it that millennials we saw and understood that at the time the boomers didn't. What's going on with AI? We can see the problems, the fear. We can understand what is being changed. What we can't see is how it will fully be changed and what will be created because of it. But just like the internet, value, jobs, structure shift. Entire new industries and economy is built off of it. Microsoft's 2026 Work Trend Index has come out, and it shows us that AI isn't just coming for your jobs, it's fundamentally changing how companies are organized, structured, and deploy. But the great thing about it is it actually walks through so we can see that process. And it's incredible what is changing and what the report is showing us. And we have a lot of research on how millennials are the new boomers. They just don't realize it. I'm really excited to get into that because once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's so obvious. And we're going to start out right there. We're going to start out with the thing that's going to tick off all you millennials, including me, and show you how you are the new boomers and you're acting like the new boomers. We just haven't realized it yet. And this will bring us back into, and it is a driving force and reason of the lack of understanding of AI, what it's actually doing. Now, part of this is easy to dismiss, but there is a scary part to this, and that it's true, and the boomers were actually right. You see, most millennials, we do not have a grasp at how fundamentally the internet changed the world, how the idea was so radical, and how scary it was. The headlines from 1995, to 2005, it was doom and gloom. They talked about how the internet is going to replace jobs, how the internet is going to fundamentally change the way the world works, how so many people are going to be left behind. And they asked, what will we do after? Will there be now no jobs? Is this going to destroy industries? The fear was so high, it led to Y2K, where people literally thought in the year 2000 that computers and internets were going to destroy the world. This was a massive change, and boomers did not understand it, especially like millennials who grew up adopting it. You have to remember, keyboards to them and using a mouse, they struggled with. It was so new. More importantly, how it was adopted and integrated into the workforce and how industries used the internet and what it changed. The comparison to the headlines, what boomers said, how they felt, and adopting the internet is almost identical for what we're seeing with AI. And there's a reason for it. The younger generations, like my kids and others, who will have grown up with AI, will most likely act like millennials did with boomers and laugh at them. But the reason why is not that the boomers were just not tech savvy, or they didn't understand things, or they were just old. In fact, the things that the headlines reported, like the automation threats, people should be afraid of computers. The fear of the internet is real and should be. I'm talking about the New York Times and more. This was everywhere, from Newsweek to USA Today, the Washington Post, all major outlets. There was so much unknown and fear. We look back at that as almost silly and how the boomers were acting. Here's the thing, though. They were actually right. This was everything from how the internet is going to make the world a more dangerous place. I'm just going through all these headlines and reading them. How no one will be able to communicate and have social skills anymore. Another headline, computers are going to take everyone's jobs. A lot of this should sound familiar. A lot of the fear. Now, there's the fundamental reason why, and we'll get into this, is because when the internet was coming out, these fears were actually real. And most of these things that they were talking about actually happened. Let's put this in perspective. How many jobs disappeared? 150,000 in the year 2000 alone. Jobs disappeared. It replaced so many jobs that evaporated. Not just jobs, entire industries and some of the largest companies in the world. Ones that had been staples, that was unimaginable that these companies wouldn't even exist. We can just go through a few, but we know that as far as entire industries go, video retail stores, film development labs, phone books, encyclopedias, maps, publishers, travel agencies, newspapers, fax machines and services, typing pools. I don't even know what that is. Switchboard operators, data entry departments, record stores, albums, photos, local software stores, bank tellers and their functions. Once again, even if they didn't go completely away, they're nothing like they used to be. Stock brokers, mail order catalog businesses and sectors. When we hear this, we automatically dismiss it because, oh, that's something of the old, and we don't understand how big that was actually to society, how much of the GDP these things were, and how so many of these things as we're going through it were structural, institutional, not simply side servicing businesses. These industries were massive, and a lot of them were fundamental with how the world worked. Those industries can go on, right? We're not going to dive into all of them because that list is actually astronomical. When you look at, though, what happened, even the ones that maybe didn't fully go away are 90% of the size that they were, and they act very, very differently. You look at companies that were replaced, like Kodak, Blockbuster, Borders, Tower Records, Yellow Pages, the Encyclopedia Britannica, travel agencies, once again, taxi dispatchers, on and on and on. There's all of these companies that were some of the biggest companies in the world that were gone or reduced to basically nothing. Now, how many jobs disappeared? Obviously, we mentioned 150,000 in 1 year, and the total amount is massive. We're talking about millions of jobs. When you look at, though, the other side of it, this is the other side of it that millennials, we saw and understood, that at the time, the boomers didn't. They couldn't see it. All they could see was the fear, and the system that it was being run on is being replaced with something different. Everyday way of living changed due to the internet. What was created, though, no one could have imagined. How could they imagine? It didn't exist before. Companies like Microsoft, Apple, Google, Amazon, Meta, Salesforce, Netflix, Uber, Airbnb, you couldn't have explained to a person because without the context of the internet, apps, connectivity, it doesn't even make sense. Entire professions, software engineers, IT departments, web developers, app developers, cloud architects, cybersecurity, SEO, digital marketing, on and on and on. Once again, when you hear that, you think, well, that makes sense. And of course, because there was something to generate that. We oversimplify it because we understand it today. But you wouldn't have understood or even known that those things could have been created back then because you didn't know how big computers, smartphones, and the internet were going to be, what that entailed, what would come out of it, what was needed. That was totally unknown. So the fear was legitimate that the baby boomers had. But the opportunity, the solutions, and how it made the world better was unknown because it hadn't occurred. Now, look at AI and what's going on with AI. We can see the problems, the fear. We can understand what is being changed. What we can't see is how it will fully be changed and what will be created because of it. That's the missing piece. So the way boomers acted about the internet is the same way that millennials and others are acting about AI. An interesting survey that was done showed that actually baby boomers aren't nearly worried or scared of AI like millennials are, which makes sense. They're the ones that are being really affected. And the system of the internet and everything that it created and produced, they know, they understand that workflow, how everything was structured around it. That is familiar. That is their default operating system. They live in that world. That's what is changing for them. The key to this is true with every revolutionary technology. When I say revolutionary technology, I'm not talking about a product. A revolutionary technology is a technology that a system is based on. It's not one product. It's not one thing that changes an individual company or industry. It is the system in which everything is created and built off of it. That's why the fear is so great and why we can't see moving to the future. This all comes down and back into what we're seeing in reports. Why? Because now what we're seeing and what like Microsoft's Work Trend Report Index shows is how AI is now restructuring. Not just an advanced Google, but an actual restructuring, which, by the way, they thought computers and the internet were also going to destroy the world and the environment because you're adding on and you're changing things that you know to things that you don't. You're seeing the impacts of it, both good and bad. The same thing could be said about chip manufacturers, or even worse, get into like batteries, how they're mined and the use of them, outrageously destructive, at least in some parts. In other parts, it actually optimized and improved things even within the environment. Now, when we say it's not the same, of course it's not the same. It's a new system. That's actually the point. But the fear in the process is people saying, oh, AI is in a bubble, right? The stocks are in a bubble. .com. The reason that occurs is because there is an unknown value that should be placed. You don't really know how to value it. So values are going up and up and up until they find where that top is. And then values have to be restructured in the new landscape. But the thing is, after the .com crash, that didn't mean these companies either didn't have that value, went away. Look at Amazon and all these other companies during the .com crash that ended up taking over the world. It is a redistribution of value and understanding how these systems work, the companies that play in them, how that value is produced and distributed. And when you have unknowns, there's way more guesswork. But a lot of people are looking at it, like in the .com, as other companies and industries that came on the back of other revolutions ended up taking over the world. So if you're right, you own Microsoft, Amazon, Apple, and your investment has gone up thousands of times. And so people are trying to get and bet and buy those new value creators that are systematic. That's really important to understand because they are the system that everything else comes off of. That is tremendous value. Now, when we look at the AI portion, the process we're seeing is still the same. The things that are different, obviously we can identify. Also, it's interesting when people say, oh, this is different because software and computers, they had engineers, you have these jobs, you have all these other things that came with it. But we didn't know about all those other things that came with it until after the fact. That's where we are with AI right now. We can't see the value creators, the solutions, the infrastructure that will come with it. Every time we've had major advancements in technology, Bronze Age, Industrial Revolution, all of these, everything that was built off of it was an opening of creation. What happened was it moved part of value systematic creation within the economy to another piece. And value that was totally unknown, nobody could see or understand it, was then created from it. So why the doom and gloom? Yeah, it was correct. Industries went away. Some of the biggest companies in the world gone. The way the world worked changed. Millions of jobs gone. The value that was created from it and that change was unprecedented. This is, in my opinion, the same as AI. We have so much fear because we can't yet see all of that value. Value is created by us, by people, products, services on the back of the new system that we didn't know and couldn't see because it didn't exist. We produce jobs. We do things to create products, services, rearrange the way systems work, increase productivity. We increase the overall quality of life. We do all of these things. During the time of computers and the internet was one of the greatest drop in extreme poverty that the world's ever seen and one of the fastest. We were able to unite economies. We were able to measure, communicate. There was so much that came with it. We were able to empower people that never had it before. This is really important because that part couldn't be seen. Now, AI, a few ways that is very different that also, frankly, makes it a little more scary for most people. The first thing is the adoption. This is true with every single technology revolution that we've ever had. When you look back at the Bronze Age and all of these different, even the Industrial Revolution, the time that it took for adoption to happen got smaller during each cycle. So one took 500 years. The next took 300 years. Then the next took 50, 60 years, right? The Industrial Revolution. Then you go from that to computers and the internet. That took 20 years. AI is still built, just like every other one, on the back of an old system, and because of that, its adoption is faster, i.e., the internet gives way for us to adopt a new system. The internet was on the back of computers. Computers were on the back of the Industrial Revolution, so on and so forth, speeding up every single time. Think of it like layers. The adoption rate, when you look at AI, by late 2024, nearly 40% of Americans age 18 to 64 had already used generative AI. About 23% employed Americans used it for work in the previous week, and 9% every single day. That was in 2024. Now, the key to this is the restructuring. This is what makes me interested. is now as AI has been coming out, we are seeing where capital is moving, structure is being built, and we're seeing the product as it is being used. And we can now see how that is reshaping all of the systems that go into deploying value in the economy, like work. This is what caught my eye with Microsoft's 2026 work trend. You can break it down and describe it as a progression. So think about it this way. You have an author, an editor, a director, and an orchestrator. Okay? What that means. The author, a human, performs the work and occasionally uses AI's assistance. Then we move into the editor. AI produces the first version. The human reviews, corrects, and determines final outcomes. Then the director. The human defines the objectives and specifications. AI executes a substantial portion of that task. Then that moves to the orchestrator. The human manages a system of specialized AI agents. One researches, the other analyzes, the other produces outputs, the other one checks, monitors, quality assurance, and another can update simultaneously the systems. Humans increasingly then handle direction, judgment, standards, and expectations. And this is where we get into the org chart for companies and how that's really where we're seeing it revolutionize things. This is where we're seeing jobs, change, and performance expectations, needs within all organizations start to change. Traditional organizations, CEOs, executives, managers, employees, work. AI native organizations, you have CEOs and leaders, high value operators, AI system and agents, thousands of tasks, humans review, exemptions, and then output. This is what Microsoft's Work Trend Index was outlining. It is the trends and the shifts. So when we look at then the shift, the human role moves upward in value chain. Once again, this is common what we see in these major technological revolutions. Humans increasingly set directions, define objectives, establish standards, allocate resources, judgments, reviews, handle unusual situations, while the AI increasingly researches, drafts, analyzes, monitors, processes, communicates, and executes repeatable workflows. Now, what Microsoft reported, that 58% of AI users said they were producing work that they could not have produced a year earlier. Now, when we look at the more advanced, those frontier professionals, that figure reached 80%. Microsoft also found that organizational factors such as culture, management, incentives, and talent practices accounted for substantially more variation in reported AI impact than actual individual factors. That's important because that now you're talking about adoption rather than use. Because as always, there are some companies, some cultures, some groups that adopt faster, make the changes, while others lag behind. History has shown us what happens to those that lag. Now, when you look at OpenAI's 2006 Small Business Report, this really caught my mind because that is on an organizational system structure that we were talking about with Microsoft. OpenAI's 2026 Small Business Report, that looks at the creation of the organization and systems as opposed to the reframing of it. Important distinction. We can see too how organizations that build from a new system up instead of just adopting it, like large organizations, can grow exponentially because they don't need to make changes. Think about all the new tech companies that came up and took over the world. They have an internal system that's created on the new system, not one that is created off the old. So, at least 4 million Americans reported that they used ChatGPT during March of 2026 to help plan, start, operate, and grow a business. Now, who is using it? This was also interesting. It is increasingly and actively not limited to tech companies. OpenAI identified professional agency services, realtor, e-commerce, home trade services, health, beauty, food, hospitality, among a lot of other major categories. Entrepreneur status classified 30% as prospective entrepreneurs and 71% as active entrepreneurs. Their usage patterns differed depending on whether or not they were starting or already operating a company. So when we look at the changes that are being made, the value shift, we look at how AI is being used to start, operate, and build those businesses. First of all, the business validation. This is the A/B testing. This is analyzing market and figuring out things before verbally committing any significant money. There may be allocation of capital to test and look at things, but really significantly allocating capital. Product development. Develop offers, services, features, packagings, and initial product concepts. Branding and positioning, generating names, positions, messaging, customer personas, brand concepts. Market research, research potential customers, competitors, pricing characteristics, and demand. Startup economics, looking at modeling, testing, cost, pricing, margins, unit economics, and different business scenarios. The things that we just mentioned in just the startup phase, there were entire industries around. Now, how AI is being used to operate it. This was also fascinating, and you can once again see these trends. Active entrepreneurs, 26 actively involved marketing and copywriting, 11% customer communication, 10% legal, and others, sales, branding, business development, were also significant, meaningful use. We see this in our organization. I have 2 startup companies that are being built off of a new AI system, meaning that they're building from the ground up, utilizing AI, building the frameworks around it, executing through it. We have other companies that are adopting and integrating AI, changing systems, and reformatting workflow and our organizations. Looking at both, obviously, it takes time, and there's bigger, more impactful changes when adopting the system. Most people are in that. That's where they're working. That's where they're living. That's where the scary part comes. You don't know. Entrepreneurs starting out, they're able to adopt, scale, allocate resources much quicker. Decision-making, testing, modeling. The speed is enormous because the feedback loops are instantaneous. You're not working with third parties, trying to communicate, data gathering, paying people to do jobs. Everything's linked, but you're always waiting on one part to try to come back. Those feedback loops are, exponentially longer. And that is really defining a new era of companies. Because then as they grow, the feedback loops aren't the same, the deployment isn't the same. These changes, as they come up, as we see, keep moving from obviously business. They'll move into government, which will always be the last to adopt. They'll run extraordinarily inefficiently. The private market will far surpass it, and then they will try to adopt those kind of infrastructures into it, which is a nightmare to even think about. how it's set up and how it works. They will lag far, far behind. Socially, adoption takes different avenues and routes. We saw this with computers, went in the private market, the internet, its usage. Then we saw social as far as actual social media, apps, media, content, everything else that were built upon that. Most of the things with AI, we do not know and understand. The ones, though, that lose are the ones that don't adopt. This is structural. It's not product. That means it's not like, I'm going to just choose not to use that, because you're only looking at it from the lens of how you consume or use in your individual choice. Even though every part of your day is actually utilizing AI. So, how your computers run, how all the traditional work that came into producing your life, the means, and how the world operate begins to use it more and more and more. So there is no not using it. You are. You just aren't directly. Therefore, you lag further behind, and you are no longer equipped to how the world works. And that's where we get the whole boomer adage and more that choose not to adopt this whole new computer, internet thing. Millennials, I see right now, very much in the same boat. The AI hate and fear. It's not AI that they hate and fear. It's the changes that they hate and fear. Not adopting does not protect you from that. Your hate makes you blind to opportunity, to seeing what it will actually do, the problems that it will solve, environmental, social, engineering, what it can complete to solve some of our biggest issues. Do it in a much quicker time frame, more efficiently, produce better outcomes faster. The ones that win are the adopters. The ones that lose are the ones that fight against it, don't adopt it because it's being driven by misunderstanding and fear. Value is always created off of a new system and structure. We don't see it because it hasn't happened yet. But just like the internet, value, jobs, structure shift. Entire new industries and economy is built off of it. It's no different with AI. So don't be a boomer. And when you look at what you're saying, how you're acting, just remember you're doing the same thing that your parents were when there were computers and the keyboard and the mouse and all of the fears. The world's going to end, Y2K, the world will be destroyed, on and on and on. But that's not necessarily a diss on baby boomers, because once again, a lot of those things were right. Millions of jobs were destroyed. Industries went under. Companies failed. Socially changed dramatically, completely different from how we communicated, acted, and everything in between with each other than before. It's not that they were wrong, but they couldn't see the opportunity and the other side. Those that did, we ended up having a bunch of millennials in hoodies that run the world. So the structural change is real. It's coming. Value will be deployed. Opportunity will be had. And you will use AI, and you currently are every single day, whether you're making the choice to or not. And if you are investing in building a company and you are trying to build it off the old way in the old system, you are already setting yourself up to fail, because the system doesn't care whether you use it or like it. It just moves on. Thanks, everybody.